Okay, so you're all very welcome. This is the first in a series of 4 winter skills sessions. It's today's topic is an introduction to winter hill walking. So the audience I have is very broad. I assume there are some novices, there are some people quite new to walking just from this year. We've 20% increase in participation in walking, which is fantastic. But obviously, that very new entry moving into the winter conditions can cause quite a lot of questions to raise and can challenge the new person to the mountains. So I'm also conscious there'll be people that are experienced and have been walking for years that are trainers and are here to look at how I might teach this subject as well. So please bear with me because the audience is so diverse. It's an introduction to hill walking. It's not necessarily going to be an expert session. And equally, as I develop the series, the next session will be on equipment. The next session after that will be on navigation. And the final session I just titled Winter Skills, but it will include things like movement skills, maybe some of the use of ice axe and crampons. But obviously, just bear in mind, we're indoors, we're not on the mountain, and a lot of this stuff is best taught in the terrain, which we obviously can't do at the moment. So just a few preempts. Obviously, we know what times we live in and we have to adhere to the requirements, 5 kilometers at the moment. So just as a headline for you, 200 fines were given out just in Wicklow to people that were traveling and shouldn't have been. So please, obviously we're in a pandemic and we need to try and manage that and behave appropriately. And then when we can get out into the mountains, we can get out into the mountains. The other thing I wanted just to flag as well is the mountain rescue teams. Obviously, with more people in the mountains, there's a higher chance that things may go wrong for people, and that the teams are definitely being called upon to help and to assist in a non-judgmental way. But obviously, they're under pressure. Their protocols are extended because they've got to include extra protocols for to deal with COVID and so forth. So they're also curtailed in their ability to fundraise. They don't get fully funded, so they have to fundraise. So a little call out to be mindful of what you're doing, to pare back what you might even normally do to stay safe, so that they're not called upon or needed to be called upon, but they're happy obviously to come out and help where things do go wrong and accidents do happen. So just I wanted to flag those areas. They're under pressure, so don't put more on them by chancing your arm and maybe pushing it too far at the moment. So winter hill walking adds, as a walker in the summer, we all enjoy that. We love getting outside and the benefits, the mental health benefits, the fitness, meeting people when we can. It just opens up another aspect of walking. And when you're out in the outdoors and the snow is laid down on the ground, it looks different, feels different. It coincides with winter time, so obviously the day length is shorter, the temperatures are lower, the conditions that you're in and dealing with are all kind of pulled in, the criteria that you're operating in, it's all kind of pulled in tighter. And what we have is less leeway for things to go wrong. So in the summertime, if you've forgotten your rain jacket, it's not as cold, so you might get away with it, but I wouldn't recommend not bringing one. If you sit down and have a longer lunch, or you get caught up because someone is slow, or the footpath is more difficult, or the terrain is more difficult, you might be an hour late, which in summertime is not necessarily a big deal, but in winter it could put you into darkness, which will slow you further. It may slow you down so much that you're getting cold. So if you've not got lots of extra gear in the summer, it might not be such a big deal. Someone else might be able to share a top, give a top to you. But in the winter time, it will become a bigger deal, and hypothermia obviously will be a more prevalent occurrence if you're not well prepared and not well kitted out. So if you're new to the sport, you may only start to realize some of what might seem obvious as you're on the hill or as you're out walking when it's happening, and you realize your boots aren't really that waterproof or that warm, your coat and your spare clothes are not actually that great for the conditions that you're in. You're sweating a lot more because you're working harder, and your clothes get damp, and then you cool, and then you realize your gloves are a bit rubbish and they're a bit thin because it's actually cold and very wet in the Irish winter. And so all your gear gets tested, everything gets kind of tested, and in the worst of conditions as well, the short days and so on, the parameters are pulled in tighter. So I think it's really important to kind of raise that awareness, especially, like I say, that there's so many people new to the mountains. So if you're out and you see people and new people that you walk with that you know don't have that years of experience, it's good to be able to share that knowledge by demonstrating what you do, not necessarily preaching to them, but just to kind of give them an idea of, oh, I've got this tip here. I always, bring 3 pairs of gloves in winter. I'd always have an extra bit of food or a hot flask in winter where I wouldn't bother with a hot drink in summer, maybe. So those kind of tips can really help people and kind of mentor them along their way so that they have good experiences. And another thing, even experienced mountaineers are going to do, even people that have been in winter conditions before, it's harder work. It takes more effort, so their fitness is challenged, even though they may be regular walkers. So choosing to do a shorter walk, less height gain, closer to access to get in and out, can really help build up the stamina during the winter period, rather than trying to do the same 7 or 8 hour walk you might do in summer. Might take you 10 hours in winter because the conditions, and then of course that's longer than daylight hours. So to kind of consider and reassess what you normally do, reassess the criteria that you normally use to risk assess, and have I got the right equipment? Have I got the right skills? Have I got the weather forecast? And have I checked what's going on? So you'll see those 3 questions popping up on various posts, but it's a really good set of questions for any level of experience. We have a routine when we go out walking, and it's really important, becomes more important when the parameters of getting out there are more challenging. So definitely check the forecast every day. There's some amazing sources of weather forecast, including a mountain forecast that links on the website as well, where you can check specific areas, regions. If you're further afield, like we often have to go, if we want to get proper winter conditions and more guaranteed, we often go to Scotland, for example. Our neighbours not too far, there would be an avalanche forecast and an area forecast for the mountain area that you're in. So very specific and local to where you're traveling. And that becomes part of your evening routine and your morning routine, to check that and keep a track. And if you're preparing for winter conditions, if you are, say, traveling to Scotland, that you start to look at that forecast in the week or 2 leading up to when you travel. So you start to build up a history of what's happening in the snowpack, the build up of the snow, and hence what you're going to be walking on, whether it's stable or not, whether there's been avalanche activity or not, which slopes are prone and which slopes are safer, or whether you might choose to travel off those aspects of slopes so that you're not in danger, you pick a safer route. So the introduction to winter hill walking, it's very broad. There's a lot of information which can be quite daunting, but pairing up with a club, someone else that's got more experience, that can be a good way to build your experience and be supported on the way. So I do think it's good to seek help, to take help, and to pare back so that you're more in your comfort zone, and expect not to know everything. It's a new area. Certainly we would have worked in the mountains and then gone to instruct in winter, and we'd all be struggling the first few days, even though we were fit outdoors every day, very fit on the mountain. The snow conditions, the cold, the effort that's required knocks everybody back a wee bit. And the fact, a bit like with skiing, you might only do it once or twice a year. So it does take a while to build up that fluency in those conditions again. So don't be surprised if you're a bit colder, a bit wetter, a bit more under pressure physically. But it's the benefits, the beauty of it. The mountains look so different, and the journeying, putting your first footprint down, you're not following a path, even though there may be one under the snow. You're breaking trails. There's a really strong sense of adventure, exploration, and just seeing the mountains in a very different view. They look very different. So the planning side of things, I'm going to have a look through this presentation. There's quite a lot I want to just a lot of it's going to be glancing over, but to just give you some of the questions to ask, some of the areas to explore further. There's quite a lot involved in planning. As you know, from a summer perspective, you get your bag together, your equipment, your food, and so forth. You pick where you're going to go, who you're going to meet, where you're going to park. You make sure that you've got access to that, because obviously land is owned, and you don't want to annoy the landowner. They're very accommodating, but equally you don't want to leave gates open and annoy them if they're farming, and cause problems for them. You want to keep that access. You want to still be able to go there next year and next week. So we do still need to consider that, and equally the sensitivity of the terrain we're traveling on, the environment that we're operating in, that we don't cause harm and cause damage by leaving litter, or, as we are seeing at the moment, face masks and tents if people are camping. So, you know, keeping to the leave no trace, take photographs only, and leave nothing behind. Take pictures. That's it. And just while I mentioned the pictures, do be careful. By taking a photograph and posting it, people may choose to go there because it will be a lovely view because you've taken a picture of it. But to consider the responsibility of doing that you may encourage hundreds of people to come back to that spot. And it may not be able to tolerate hundreds of people coming back to that spot. And equally, the people might think it looks fine and safe, when in fact, it requires a lot of skill to get in there. So do consider the impact of the pictures that you post on others that may not know the background of what it takes to get into that kind of place, and what equipment they might need, and what risks they're taking on. They just may not be aware of them. So I tend to try not make it too obvious where I am. I tend to take very few photographs anyway. But just to be very aware of that. We've got a huge influx of people to the mountains, which, you know, people are loving it and enjoying it, but there's a responsibility there as well. We want access to remain, and we want plants and flora, the fauna that are there before us to be able to continue to be there after us. So bringing litter out, I don't, you know, whether it's organic or not, it wasn't there before, and particularly in winter, it's not going to decompose very quickly. Bringing all solid waste out, and I think you know what I'm getting at. Whilst unpleasant, we do it for our dogs. We don't leave that behind. We shouldn't be really doing that as well. The water courses will be covered in winter by snow. You won't necessarily know that you're very close to water, or source of water. And if you cover things up with just snow, of course, they're going to melt out in the spring or later and be there on the ground and go into the water courses and so forth. So prepare like you would do if you're walking a dog. You'd bring a bag to collect, and you'd bring it out. You wouldn't leave toilet paper and sanitary items. You'd bring them back out again, and that's really what we should be doing, given the increased numbers, that the impact of that has, and the same with the footpaths that we walk on. Trying to avoid footpaths so that you don't get your boots wet, which they're kind of designed for, rather than staying on the path and not widening the erosion and the damage caused by the footfall. So it's just to be aware. There's plenty of information. There's lots of good materials on our website to read more about the environment that you're operating in, the access arrangements or non-arrangements, and the way that we have access to land in Ireland. So definitely good to go and research some more of those areas. So the weather forecast I mentioned, very important no matter what day you're going out on the mountains, purely just to find out what to expect so you can use it to the best of your advantage. It's going to be lashing in the morning, let's go in the afternoon. In the winter conditions, go very early. Give yourself plenty of time to start your day and to allow for slower travel and more difficult conditions maybe to operate in. So start early, don't start late in the day. Give yourself plenty of time. If you do end up starting late, cut short what your plan is, so that you're not under pressure at the end of the day. The wind is going to have a bigger impact. The temperature will be lower. The cloud cover will reduce visibility. Can you navigate when you can't see where you're going? That's a good question to ask yourself. And if you can't, stay low, stay below the cloud line, stay in the valleys. No point going up if you can't see anything a lot of the time anyway. So it's nice to be able to have a view. So can you navigate at all Do I need to stick on tracks and trails if you can't, and where you can get out easily. The footpaths that you're used to using, there's a good chance they may be covered over. And snow can, if in good condition, snow can make a footpath anywhere. It's really, if it's good solid snow and not powder, you can make a nice footpath through that. But it can be hard work if it's softer and you're up to your knees in it. So the navigation side, if you're using tracks and trails, can become more difficult. So you may choose to pick places where the tracks are defined because they're through forestry and there's a gap in the trees, and you're following through there. So consider your route choice. Consider where you're going to go. Up a valley, it's hard to lose the valley. Across an open slope is more difficult to keep track of where you are. And if the weather is closed in, you can't see, it can make that more difficult as well. So other tips for winter, everyone carries phones practically. So your battery in your phone does not like cold. So try and keep it warm. Carry a spare, like most people have old phones, maybe charge up an old phone, have a spare. Make sure that other people in your group maybe carry some phones. And again, they're used for many different things, from your navigation device to your locating yourself device to ringing to let people know that you're going to be late, or in the worst case that you might need to call for help. So using a phone that might need to be used for help to navigate by may not be a good sensible decision, because your phone could easily run out of charge. And if the temperature's cold, that may happen because it's the battery is cold. So just ideally be able to navigate as well, or have the people in your group, that a few of you can keep a track of the navigation and not solely rely on one device, which may just lose power or could get stood on or just cut off because it's cold. So just don't have your eggs all in one basket. Some bits and pieces in winter, it can often be very sunny, so sunglasses and sun cream can still be a useful thing in your rucksack. Think as well, generally people are walking in groups, but often we walk on our own, which is fine, just to kind of manage where you are and let people know where you're going to be. So the fitness of your group will be challenged in winter. The experienced person compared to a novice, they don't know how they cope in cold conditions. They just don't have that experience yet, perhaps. So trying to walk with more experienced people if you can, or pare back what you're doing so that you're in your comfort zone and gradually build that experience. There's plenty of clubs you can join where you can get access to experience from the other members of the club. So there's a whole stack of clubs on our website. If that's something you like to do, not everyone likes a club setting, but they can be very supportive that way. And there's plenty of them around. And you've just interview a few and find one that suits your mindset. So in the winter, you're generally carrying more kit as well. So your rucksack might be that bit heavier than normal. You're carrying I hope, a hot flask, a hot drink, which is heavier than a water bottle might be by a bit. You're carrying more gloves, more gear, more warm clothes. So each of those items adds up to make your rucksack that bit heavier and make the effort you have to put in to carry it all more difficult. And just purely walking in snow can be heavy work. And, if your feet are sinking, it can slow your progress. Okay, so those are just a few things around planning. If, for example, you've gone over to Scotland, there are, like I say, the local forecast. There's an avalanche forecast that has some good diagrams, visuals to show which aspects of the slope, what altitude the snow line is, for example, which aspects are more prone to avalanche risk. We do get avalanches in Ireland, not that often, but they do happen when there's enough snow buildup and the conditions are that allow for that to happen. So, but more so where you get lots of snow. So in Scotland in winter, you would get more snow, so therefore they'd have an avalanche forecast. And it is a bit of an art to start interpreting them, and it can be quite intimidating to try to interpret it when you're actually going to go out and put your interpretation to good use. So there can be a few strategies that you can adopt to to your route planning. So you don't go on big open slopes. If you're worried, you might stick on ridges where the snow doesn't build up so much. For example, there's a few different things that we'll probably look at more so in the navigation section on that session. So definitely checking the forecast, getting used to doing that for a few days before you go, a couple of weeks, to build up your fluency in it and to get an idea of any patterns and trends that have been happening. Planning a safe route so that you can have a safe journey. So picking ridges, for example, when you're worried about the open slope. Avoiding terrain traps. So, walking into a narrow gully up where the only way that snow can fall is down through the gully and you can't escape from that, or, a narrowing. So avoiding those kind of things, making your decision to avoid natural hazards like that. There's a great document, a leaflet produced, Be Avalanche Aware, which you can see it's almost like the road atlas if you want to find out traveling around Ireland, and it gives you information, weather and conditions, you and your party, and the mountain landscape. So it gives you some criteria by which to judge and to break down your interpretation of where you're going to go, what you're going to do, and how you're going to go about staying safe doing that. So we used to have a good few of these in the office, but obviously we can't get into the office anymore. But I do think you can get them on the Mountaineering Scotland, the Scottish Council. I think they should have them on there, but if you can't, just give me a shout and I will try and I'll find out where they can be sourced again. But this opens out and it gives you prompts and questions to help make a decision where you maybe don't have a lot of experience yet, or you're just struggling to interpret. It's a lot around that. So it's quite user friendly and it will help identify hazards around avalanche. So the other side is, I would say, is to get some training around avalanche assessment and winter skills if you can, and navigation skills, all of those things. The training can be really helpful. There's a good few videos on the website around navigation training and a few other things. So definitely have a look in there, see that can help, or the likes of mountain skills training. Those kind of things can get you set up in certain aspects. So I just want to come back a little bit. I mentioned about starting in the short day. So starting early in the day is very important. It gives you more time to manage any difficulties you may come across, for example. Carrying a head torch. Not everyone might carry a head torch in summer, even though I would, because you've got a long day and the chance of you running out of daylight is pretty slim. So you may choose not to carry a head torch, but in winter, the chances of you getting caught out by an hour or two, which is not that uncommon, be a much higher chance. So I would carry a head torch. And a lot of head torches now, we used to always say carry a spare bulb, but you can't actually change bulbs on a lot of them. So really it's a matter of carrying a spare head torch and or batteries. A way to do that is to make sure that there's a few people in the group that have them. Ideally, everyone should have some kind of lighting device, but your phone is not good enough. And if you think of it, if you've no light, it's not you can't see where you're going, you can't read your map. So that can become a big problem. And thank you. I see some people putting some links up into the chat. I appreciate that. So people can find those documents as well. Ask yourself, can you navigate at nighttime? There's a high chance you get caught out in the darkness in winter, way higher because the day is shorter. So can you? Do you know how to navigate at night? Have you done that kind of navigation? Or could you navigate where you're going in the dark because you're on a footpath? So, there's a way of dealing with it if you don't have good land reading skills yet, but you might have good footpath navigation. So do consider that when you're picking where you choose to go. The other side of the day as well and managing yourself is the nutrition. You can get away in summer with maybe not carrying so much food, not maybe drinking that much. I'm a devil for not drinking there very much on the mountain, but in winter, I'd always carry a flask, a hot drink to get warm if I get cold. If say I fell into a stream or stepped into something and I got very wet and cooled very quickly, I needed to get some heat into me. So, having a good breakfast, Porridge is fantastic, but something that will slow release the energy and keeping that topped up. So listening to your body, if you're feeling a bit peckish, do something about it. If you're feeling a bit thirsty, it's probably a bit, you're already tending towards dehydration, drink. You can use the likes of the platypus. It's, you know, a water tube from your pack, so that you're more inclined to sip away. Whereas if you've a bottle in your bag, you're less likely to stop because it's cold and drink. So, but just be conscious the platypus tube, if it's very cold, the water is in a very thin line and freezes or can freeze. So you can either insulate the tube, or just have the water where, make sure you can get the water out and drink regularly. But the platypus tube can freeze, so just you can put neoprene or something around it to stop it from freezing. If it's very, very cold place that you're in, then a big wide bottle is better. So around the day as well, the planning starts at least the night before. So the evening session is always, what's the weather, what's the forecast, where are we going to go, talking to other people to ask where they've been and getting the information, and then making a plan the night time, packing your bag at the night time. And then when you get up in the morning, you can have your breakfast and your kit is out and off you head early. Wait until the morning to make the plan can definitely pretty much guarantee you're going to be a late start. So have that done the night before. It prepares you mentally as well. And it gets you thinking about what you might need in your pack when you're not cold or when you're not under pressure to get gone. And do check again, review it in the morning by all means, because the forecast might have changed or something might have happened with the weather conditions, or the wind might have changed. Weather is invariably difficult to read because you don't know when things are going to happen. So you know that roughly this pattern is going to occur, but it may start earlier or it may have not happened yet. So you might need to adjust your plan, but definitely, you know, recheck in the morning, but have all your planning done the night before. If, you know, a wee tip with your weather, if you're in a place where there's avalanche risk and they've said all north facing slopes are at risk, you may choose to mark your map with a mark, you know, if it's laminated, just get a big marker pen and just put a symbol or a line saying, don't go on this slope, something that will remind you that slope aspect is dangerous or, you know, is in risk of avalanche. In case you think, well, I'm really cold, I want to get off quickly. Well, there's a nice way down this northern slope. You may not be thinking about avalanche at that point. You might be thinking about getting off the mountain, so, or off the hill or whatever. So definitely, you know, those kind of things you're more likely to think of when you're at home and warm and dry. So you can do those kind of things to remind you when you're on the hill. Oh, actually, yeah, I remember that slope's prone today. And, you know, choose to go down some other aspect of slope in a different direction. How are we doing for time? Okay, so just very briefly, there will be a session on equipment, but just a few headlines for you for today. So there's a tendency to overdress in winter because it's cold. So ideally dress pretty well and I dress pretty well, but not too hot because it's strenuous in winter and you will get warm fairly quickly. Start off a little bit on the chilly side and build up a head of steam, and then it'll reduce the amount of sweating that you do. And obviously sweat is going to create moisture on your skin and dampen potentially your clothes if they're not very good at wicking, but it's designed to cool you down. And you don't really want to be cooled down in winter, so it's better to try and regulate it rather than have to manage it after you've gotten too hot. So certainly carry plenty of layers, thinnish layers, not big bulky ones. So you can regulate that temperature. You can add a wee jacket or a waistcoat type thing. You can take it off. You can open a zip or a pit zip, an armpit zip to allow for cooling. Windproof layers can be very good in winter as well, to stop the wind blowing through and the effect of wind chill, and equally lots of bridging clothes, so not a scarf but like a gaiter around the neck or gaiters around your ankles, wrists, gloves with long cuffs, those kind of things, and obviously hats, balaclava or the we're very used to having masks over our faces at the moment, but the tubes that you can wear around to cover the gaps are all very useful things to keep wind and snow blowing around out of your face. And in winter, goggles to protect your eyes. And those of you that wear glasses, they can be very good to protect your eyesight. So your glass lens does not get covered in the snow or the rain or the wind or whatever. It doesn't affect your actual vision. So gloves is very important, are very important. I would always carry 3 pairs of gloves in winter. If you drop a pair or if they get wet, they're not that much use then. You need to stay dry in winter. So being able to change your gloves is important. Mittens are warmer. So again, if sorry, just a message there coming through. So mittens are warmer because your hand stays as a fist. So it's like having everyone in the bed together. They can warm each other. So even pulling your fingers out of the glove fingers and making a fist can help warm your hand a little bit. Whereas when they're out on their own, they will cool down if your gloves aren't that warm. And for dexterity as well. So when you're picking gloves, definitely spend a bit more. That's what I would say. If you can't use your fingers properly, you can't take a bearing so easily. It's harder to read, to use your map properly. It's hard to fasten your zips. And if you can't use your hands properly, it's very debilitating and quite a risk and a danger if you can't. Sorry. So that's a couple of bits and pieces. So with the layering as well, I'd have plenty of layers, small layers, thin layers. So you can layer up and layer down again, so you can manage the heat and think about the fabrics that you're going to use. Down is fantastic, but it needs to be dry. There's plenty of synthetic materials as well that can be warm too. I've already mentioned about keeping the phone dry warm, and carrying spares. Your compass as well. So if you choose to carry your phone in your pocket to keep it warm next to you, be very cautious about the effect of a phone on the needle in a compass. Any lumps of metal it's magnetic, so will be affected by it. So do consider where you carry these things in winter, where you'd normally have your compass up near your chest. When you're using it, if you've got your phone in the same chest pocket, it's going to pull the compass needle in the wrong direction. So just those kind of things, to be cautious and think about what tweaks you're making and what impact they may have as well. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to take a quick look in the chat here. There's quite a few comments, and thanks to those of you that have been answering some of the sideline questions. So the leaflet I mentioned, the Be Avalanche Aware, they prefer people to download Save the Trees, which makes a lot of sense. So I believe there's a PDF of that now, which I'd be all for. Paper is okay. Sorry, I'm just seeing a few messages here now, but anyway, they've maybe passed on. Okay, I'll just see now. Yes, some of the gloves have magnets in them, I think to allow for use on phones. So again, if you're carrying those and trying to use a compass, it's not gonna work. It's gonna cause the compass to pull off in the wrong direction. So useful tips, thank you. There's a couple of questions. Yeah, it's okay if you need to leave early, Neil. It'll be recorded. So and yes, you'll need to register. You need to register for each session, just so I know what numbers are coming to each session. So thank you. Okay, so we started at about 1:15. So just in terms of some winter specifics, so we've not mentioned any, winter specific items such as axe and crampons, ropes or harnesses or helmets. They may seem a little bit excessive for an introduction to winter hill walking, but as walkers, we'd be more likely to use the helmet sometimes, perhaps a rope sometimes, for just protecting ourselves on walking terrain, not climbing. So it's important, I think, though, to realize that walkers use axes, walkers use crampons. It's not the remit of climbers only. So to allow you grip where you're standing, to allow you stay on the slope where you want to stay on the slope. And if you do slip, that you can use an axe to help slow your travel and stop eventually. So it can be a little intimidating when you start pulling out technical items, and expensive. But to be able to walk the way you normally would, you're not normally going to slide generally off a slope. If you fall over, you might, if it's very steep, but in general, you'll stop where you land. But in winter, rain gear, which you're more likely to be wearing, is lovely sliding material, and will send you rocketing down the slope fairly quickly. And an axe in your hand can be very useful to help stop you. So I will be looking more at that in the equipment session. You will need to maybe buy some extra bits of kit or review your existing kit. So if any of your kit is close to its end, winter will finish it for you. It will break it. It will snap the tags on your gaiters if they're about to go. The zip will definitely break in winter. Everything breaks in winter that's close to breaking. So definitely good to have a look at your kit before you go out in winter. Check that your gaiter straps are not about to break, and put new ones in, replace them with a bit of something else, some cord that's strong. And the same goes for your boots. If you've been wearing them all through the summer and getting out lots, they may be well worn. You can get the boots resoled. Soft, bendy boots are not so good in winter. You want something that's a bit more rigid, so you can use them to edge. So when you put your foot into snow on a slope like that, the boot doesn't fold and bend, but stays as a rigid, flat platform for you to be able to walk on. So your calves are not screaming because they're being stretched all the time. So there's different scales of boots, different rigidity in the soles of boots, which I'll go into more on the kits, the equipment discussion. But just to be aware of that, if you're about to buy warmer boots for winter, to bear in mind that they're more rigid as well. And the fitting of your boots, you might want to wear an extra pair of socks. If they're in any way tight on your feet, they're going to reduce circulation, which will make your feet colder. So just because they're a bit cheaper in the sale, it's not a saving. You'll end up having to sell them again. So get properly fitting boots. The same with gloves. I remember buying gloves as a student, didn't have a lot of money, and they were a bit too tight, and it created all kinds of problems. They were double layer gloves, and you could take the liners out, but the liners were too tight. So cuts off the circulation. Cold hands can operate. So, make sure that they also, with gloves, that you can get them on and off. If your hands are a bit damp, the lining does not pull out when you take your hand out of the glove. They should be stitched in to keep them in place. And that the fabric they use, there's nice microfiber that some manufacturers use for gloves, but it's really sticky when your hands are damp. So something that your hand can glide in and out of easily, whether it's a bit damp or not, is a good tip. So the other thing with winter, you need to make decisions more quickly, I suppose. You need to make good decisions more quickly because you don't have time on your hands. So when do you take out an axe? When do you put on your crampons? When are they useful? When do they add to your safety? And equally, when do I take off the crampons? When can I put my axe away because it's causing more of a hindrance? So, staying in crampons on ground that doesn't really need it, you're more likely to trip and fall than if you're in your boots. So those decisions for inexperienced people can be quite difficult. They just leave them on, or they just don't put them on till too late. So, picking places before in your planning. When am I going to be hitting the snow line? I should be thinking at that saddle. That's the place I should be thinking about putting on my crampons because I'm just about to reach the snow line. So those kind of things you can write down when you're looking at the forecast and so on at home. And it will serve as a reminder when you're on the hill when you get there. Oh yeah, I was supposed to be thinking about something here. What was it? Oh yeah, snow and the crampons, that kind of thing. one other thing, a lot of walkers, summer walkers and winter walkers use walking poles, and they can be of great benefit to spread the load and to keep better balance, to help you on certain types of terrain. They can be very useful, and they can help speed you along as well. In winter, they definitely do not replace the job of an ice axe. It's a bit of a false idea if you think it's going to do that. That's not really what they're designed for. So you may often see people with one pole out in their downhill hand and one axe in their uphill hand and working away like that. But when you're on steeper ground where you kind of need your hands free, it's nearly better to put the pole away and just use your axe and work away that way. So just if you are used to using poles, you may also adjust the lengths. On some terrain, it's fine to continue to use the poles in winter. But if you're on steeper ground where you kind of need your hands to negotiate things, it's probably more of a hindrance certainly to have two out, and sometimes even to have the one out. And don't put your hands through the straps. You want them to fall. If you fall, you don't want your wrist being pulled by the hand caught in a strap. Okay, so I'm just checking through. I have a pile of notes here. There's so many topics that we could go into. So I just wanted to move back again into some of the landscape items. So in summer, within reason, you can pretty much walk and pick your route, avoiding cliffs and so forth, but you can pretty much go where you like if the terrain will permit it. Where in winter, you've got other criteria that even though the slope is walkable, it may not be safe to walk on it because it's at risk of avalanche, for example. So you need to start looking around your route choice to accommodate those things. So equally, avalanche slopes are not necessarily very steep slopes. They're quite shallow, really. Around 30 degrees, 30 to 40 degrees is where most avalanche is going to happen. So those are classic walking down the hill slopes, comfortable walking down the hill slopes. So, you've all got your own personal protractor of 90 degrees, and then halfway there, that's about 45 degrees. So then 30 is a bit less. It's actually quite a shallow angle, but you've got this in your hand. So if you're not sure about the angle on the slope that you're on, you can use that to gauge where the slope line is, to give you an idea. And bulging slopes as well, convex slopes, are also where the snow bulges over. It can create a fracture line in that area for an avalanche to trigger. So again, it's very typically where we would walk down or up slopes in the mountains. So you can't always go exactly where you're used to going, and you can't always choose to stay on the same slopes that you'd normally can do, because there's this extra layer, literally, that could create a hazard in certain conditions. So the slope may not be stable. So that issue of stability can come into play. And the other side as well is that scree slopes that have loose terrain on them, can be concealed by snow, but still hide holes and gaps that are ankle breaking terrain. But sometimes can make it, they can cover it with hard snow. It means you can walk over a boulder field much easier than you could in summertime. So it just to kind of bear in mind that the terrain can be affected that way. And then there's other things that you would see, features that you would see that you wouldn't see in summer. So cornices, for example, obviously form in snow, so it looks a bit like a wave about to curl. And they can create hazard if you're under them. They can drop on you. If you're over them, you may find you're on the top of a mountain, but there's actually no land underneath you. You're just standing on an overhang of snow. So this is where I mentioned that you may choose to use a rope in winter walking, because you're trying to make sure you might rope together and spread out so that if someone does meander close to an edge, that there's 2 or 3 other people on the rope that will protect them. Or if they're trying to navigate ahead and they're not sure how close they are to something, the weather might be poor visibility there. So you can use that to then protect, but ideally you navigate well back from any known edges that you're going to be dealing with. Okay, so I'm roughly coming into the end. I'm just going to do a quick scan through my notes to see that there's plenty more material, but this is an introduction. There's a lot of resources on our website around navigation skills and articles within hill walking and winter hill walking in the hill walking pages. In the training pages, there's lots of information about various courses, but equally, there is syllabus content there with information for you to go in and have a look at and say, all right, I didn't even know I didn't know that. I can go and have a look and see what information is there, or maybe do a course when we're able to get back out again. But definitely knowing more will increase the enjoyment that you have in the day. There's places to go train, and there are trainers to go train with. So we've got national centres across the UK and Ireland. One up in the Mournes and Tollymore, Glenmore Lodge in Scotland, the Plassie Brennan in North Wales, which is the English centre, but in Wales. So they would run winter courses. Obviously, Scotland gets more of a winter than we do. So the Mountaineering Scotland website has a lot of good resources as well. We work very closely with all the councils and the training boards, and we don't mind sharing information between ourselves. So those are good places to go find. There's a plethora of information and videos online, but there's no filter as to whether they're good, accurate, or otherwise. But the council websites are delivered, and the training websites will be delivered by qualified, trained people. So you would hope they know what they're talking about. So they can be very good places to go to get some information. There's a find an instructor course. So if you don't feel up to, which is fine, we all need help with certain things. If you don't feel up to tackling the winter mountains, you'd like someone to bring you when we can, then on the mountain training website, our qualification holders have an association they can join, and there's a find an instructor facility there, and you can search by activity. So winter mountaineering, winter walking, winter climbing, whatever you want to do, and it will give you a list, and you can search by location. So you can find people that are in Ireland or Scotland or wherever it is you want to bring someone in. So I mentioned that there are clubs out there that you can join to help support your pathway into more knowledge if you're new to this, and to meet nice people who like going walking as well. So the other thing, I'm an old schooler. I like books. I like to read about stuff as well as watch videos on them. So we've quite a few books in our shop, but also on in the general market as well, around winter mountaineering and winter walking skills, winter weather, avalanche, all that kind of stuff. So there's a booklet that we give out as part of our mountain skills scheme, for example, called Safety in the Mountains. And that has a good chapter on winter walking and bits and pieces, but also some general information around navigation in summer conditions as well, and other bits around equipment and so on. Hazards, camping, the environment, emergencies, lots of different topics that it's a really good base. And it is a book, but it's not a hefty read. So that there is available as well. And then for those with more in-depth interest, we've a winter skills book, which is quite good, and there's a hill walking book as well. They're produced by Mountain Training, so they're geared towards people that are doing instructor courses, but there's a lot of good and useful information in that as a textbook, if you like, as a reference book. There's another book I just don't have here. It's in the office. Same style as these, called Navigation as well, which is very good. And Avalanche. Where is it? There we go. There's plenty of books on avalanche. This book has been around for quite a while. Mountain Skills Training Handbook. So it's not the mountain skills scheme as we know it, but it's the skills that you need for the mountains for winter, summer, walking, climbing. So it's quite diverse, but it's got a lot of good diagrams and it's semi-waterproof. You could bring it onto the hill if you really wanted to do that. Another good book on weather for hill walkers. That's another Mountain Training endorsed book. So that's quite good. And again, it's not too hefty. And DVD on hill walking essentials. So that's quite a good resource as well. Okay, so I think it's 1 o'clock now, and I think we've done around an hour of a session. I'm just going to have a quick look into the chat and see. Yeah, sorry, someone asked the sat nav, is the sat nav going to interfere with your compass? Yeah, any lump of metal is going to, so don't hang them around together. Don't put them near each other. So yeah, Brona, are the next classes also webinars, and will the issue of joining be resolved? Yes, it will. I hadn't realized there was an issue until the very last minute, so my apologies and thanks again. And then there's some thank yous coming in now, and there's a couple of Q&As. I'll just. Is there? Yes, I'm going to be recording the sessions if you can't make it on the day. So Thomas, just going back to the question I mentioned about ISACs and walking pole straps. So walking poles have straps at the top. Often people put their wrists right through them, and if you fall, they can snap the wrist because they won't release. That's what I was talking about. So I tend to have that strap out off my hand. With ISACs, there's been an ongoing with straps, without straps. I've not carried one with a strap for a long time. I tend not to bother and just make sure I don't drop it. They can become, you do tend to use them when you're climbing because you don't want to drop your tools, because that would be very serious. If you're on something steep or an ice climb. So it's a decision, but you can clip them onto something other than you. But I wouldn't put them through the ISACs either, unless I'm climbing, and then you need the thing to be attached then, if you choose to use straps. Hope that's answered your question. And there's just one more. So one person's just asked about the PDF. Sorry, these chats are coming in faster. They're going off the screen. So the Avalanche PDF document, if you scroll back through the chat, I think you can see it. There's a link. I can do that, and I will send that on. I'll send up a follow-up email to you all anyway. I'll include the link to the Avalanche Aware. Make a note. What are the topics for the next ones? So, excuse me. The next one is equipment. The third one is winter navigation, and the fourth one is winter skills. So I'll be looking at more about movement and other essential skills, I suppose, for winter in a nutshell. Yes, please do not go outside of your 5 kilometers. Please, please, please obey the rules so we can all stay safe. Absolutely. Thank you, Pat. Let me just see. You're very welcome. And there's someone asking there about the standard touch screen gloves. I'm not sure what they put into the touch screen gloves to make them work, but if there's anything metallic in there, then yes, it's going to have an effect on your compass. Where can you check full weather forecast information that includes visibility conditions? There's various weather forecasts. So in Scotland, for example, they will have a winter forecast, and it will include the height of snow, the snow line, and the cloud level. In Ireland, there's a mountain weather forecast. I'd have to check exactly what criteria there are there within that, but yes, that's where you would have a look. Sorry, these are coming up so fast. I'm frightened I'm going to miss them. The link for the next session will be an email with the link going out to you. I have them set up to go a day before because we all lose our emails. We get way too many, but for some reason it didn't this time. So yes, the link will work the next time, Anne. Yes. Thank you. You're all very welcome. Let me just see. Is there a course in Kerry with the mountaineering, navigation, and winter walking? The courses that I'm talking about, the navigation courses are run around the country. We have 90 odd trainers that deliver mountain skills. So that would be the fundamental skills. It wouldn't necessarily, it would cover lots of navigation that you would use in the winter, but it's not a winter course. You can employ a winter ML holder, award holder, or a winter mountaineering and climbing instructor to deliver winter specific courses for you. We have a list of providers on our website, and there's a PDF with all their qualifications, what courses they can deliver, and contact details. So if you're struggling to find that, come back to me and I'll point you. But it's in under mountain training on the website, and click on any of the award schemes. You'll see a green button, provider, and that will list. It'll give you an idea of where they're based as well. Where can you check the weather forecast? Oh, sorry, I think I've already answered that one, Carol. Yeah, but Met Éireann and the UK weather one, its name escapes me. Met, I can't remember it. But anyway, the forecast where you live, you can check. But not necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily give that detail of visibility like you get in Scotland in winter. I think we're nearly there. You're welcome, everyone. Okay, the UK Mountain Weather, mwis.org.uk. That's mountain specific. And I think we're going to wrap up there. I can see lots of thanks coming in. If you've any follow-up, do get in touch. And I'm sorry for the delayed start, and thank you for your patience hanging in there. I'm just going to click the stop the recording. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks. Goodbye.